Stop answering every call. Stop saying yes to every request. Stop being available to everyone all the time, because the moment you do, something strange happens. Your value skyrockets, your peace returns, and people start treating you differently. But why does this work, and what's really happening beneath the surface? Look, we've been taught our entire lives that being helpful, available, and accommodating is the right way to live. Be there for everyone. Drop everything when someone needs you. Make yourself accessible at all times. But here's what nobody tells you. This approach doesn't make you valuable. It makes you invisible. It doesn't earn you respect. It earns you exhaustion. And today we're going to explore why stepping back, becoming less available, and creating space in your life isn't selfish. It's necessary. It's transformative. And it might be the single most important shift you ever make. Think about your life right now. Really think about it. How many times this week did you drop what you were doing to help someone else? How many times did you say yes when you wanted to say no? How many times did you push your own needs aside because someone else needed something from you? Now here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of us are trapped in a cycle of over-availability. We check our phones the moment we wake up. We respond to messages within seconds. We agree to plans we don't want to make. We attend events that drain us. We give our time, our energy, our attention to anyone who asks for it, without question, without boundaries, without pause. And what happens? We get burned out. We feel resentful. We lose touch with ourselves. We become strangers to our own desires, our own needs, our own dreams, because we're so busy being everything to everyone else that we forget to be anything to ourselves. But here's the deeper problem. When you're always available, people stop valuing your time. Think about it. When something is abundant, it loses its worth. Water is everywhere, so we take it for granted. Air surrounds us constantly, so we don't think about it. But take either away for just a few minutes, and suddenly they become the most valuable things in the world. Your availability works the same way. When you're always there, always ready, always willing, people assume you always will be. They don't appreciate the sacrifice you're making. They don't see the other things you're giving up. They just see someone who's always free, always accessible, always waiting. And this creates a vicious cycle. The more available you are, the less people value you. The less they value you, the more you feel the need to prove your worth by being even more available. And round it goes, until you're completely depleted, wondering why nobody seems to appreciate everything you do. But there's something even more insidious happening here. When you're constantly available to others, you become unavailable to yourself. You lose the quiet moments where ideas form. You miss the space where creativity grows. You abandon the stillness where you actually figure out what you want from life. Your mind never gets a chance to rest, to wander, to explore, because it's always responding, always reacting, always attending to someone else's agenda. And slowly, without even realizing it, you stop having your own agenda altogether. This is the crisis of modern life. We're more connected than ever, but more disconnected from ourselves. We're more reachable than ever, but more out of reach from our own inner voice. We're more available to the world, but completely unavailable to our own soul. The illusion of importance. Let's talk about something that might sting a little. When you make yourself constantly available, you think you're being important. You think people need you. You think you're indispensable. But here's the reality check. You're not being important, you're being convenient. There's a massive difference between these two things, and understanding this difference will change everything for you. When someone is important to us, we plan around them. We schedule time with them in advance. We clear our calendar because we value their presence. We think about when we'll see them next. We make an effort. But when someone is merely convenient, we reach out whenever we feel like it. We expect them to accommodate us. We assume they'll be free. We don't plan ahead because we don't need to. They're always there anyway. Now, ask yourself honestly, are people treating you like you're important or like you're convenient? Do they schedule time with you in advance, or do they just assume you'll drop everything when they call? Do they respect your time, or do they expect you to work around theirs? This distinction matters because it reveals how people actually see you. And here's the uncomfortable truth. When you're always available, you train people to see you as convenient, not important. You teach them that your time has no value, that your schedule is infinitely flexible, that your priorities can always be rearranged. And once people see you this way, it's incredibly hard to change their perception because you've set a precedent. You've established a pattern. And now if you suddenly try to set boundaries, they don't see it as healthy self-respect. They see it as you being difficult or changed or not as nice as you used to be. But here's what happens when you stop being so available. When you start saying no, when you create boundaries and stick to them, people are forced to plan around you. They have to schedule time with you in advance. They have to consider whether what they're asking is really worth your time. And in doing this, you shift from convenient to important. You transform from someone who's taken for granted into someone who's genuinely valued, because scarcity creates value, always has, always will. Think about the people in your life who aren't always available, the ones who have clear boundaries, the ones who you actually have to schedule time with because they're not just sitting around waiting for you to reach out. How do you view them? Chances are you respect them more, you value the time you get with them. You don't take them for granted. That's the power of selective availability. It's not about being cold or distant or playing games. It's about recognizing that your time, your energy, your presence are valuable resources. And valuable resources aren't infinite. They're not available to everyone, all the time, for any reason. When you understand this, you stop operating from a place of scarcity, thinking you need to grab every opportunity to be needed. Instead, you operate from abundance, knowing that the right people, the right opportunities, the right experiences will find you when you're not desperately chasing them. The paradox of pulling back. Now here's where things get really interesting. When you start becoming less available, something paradoxical happens. People become more interested in you, they reach out more, they value your time more, they treat you better. This seems backwards, doesn't it? You'd think that being less available would push people away. That saying no would make you less liked. That creating boundaries would damage relationships. But the opposite happens, and there's a deep psychological reason for this. Human beings are wired to pursue what moves away from them and take for granted what's always present. It's built into our psychology. We want what we can't easily have. We value what requires effort to obtain. We chase what's moving away. This isn't shallow or manipulative. It's just how our brains work. When something is scarce, our brain interprets it as valuable. When something is abundant, our brain assumes it's not worth much. This is basic evolutionary wiring that kept our ancestors alive. So when you pull back, when you become less available, you're not playing games. You're simply aligning with how people naturally assess value. You're stopping the pattern of overgiving that was training people to undervalue you. And here's what's beautiful about this. The people who genuinely care about you will understand. They'll respect your boundaries. They'll appreciate you more because they're getting the real you, not the exhausted, resentful, spread too thin version of you. They'll value the time they get with you because it's no longer taken for granted. But the people who don't genuinely care about you will reveal themselves. They'll get upset when you're not immediately available. They'll complain when you say no. They'll try to make you feel guilty for having boundaries. And this is actually a gift, because now you know who was in your life for the right reasons and who was just there because you were convenient. This process is like a filter. It naturally separates the relationships worth keeping from the ones that were draining you all along. And yes, it might hurt to see some people fall away, but it's not a loss. It's a clearing. You're making room for better, healthier, more reciprocal connections. The paradox is that by being less available, you actually improve the quality of all your relationships. Because you're showing up as a whole person with needs, boundaries, and self-respect. And people who are worth having in your life will respect that. In fact, they'll love you more for it. Think about it in practical terms. When you say yes to everything, you're often showing up depleted. You're there physically, but not mentally or emotionally. You're going through the motions, but not really present. That's not good for anyone. But when you're selective about what you say yes to, when you protect your time and energy, you show up fully, you're present, engaged, energized. You bring your best self to the interactions you choose to have, and that's infinitely more valuable than being physically present, but emotionally absent. Or reclaiming your inner world. When you stop being available to everyone else all the time, something magical happens. You become available to yourself. And this is where real transformation begins. Most of us have no idea who we actually are anymore. We've spent so long responding to other people's needs, conforming to other people's expectations, living according to other people's timelines that we've lost touch with our own inner landscape. We don't know what we really want. We don't know what brings us genuine joy. We don't know what our own thoughts sound like without the constant noise of other people's demands. Silence scares us. Stillness makes us uncomfortable. Being alone with ourselves feels wrong because we've forgotten how to do it. We immediately reach for our phones, turn on the television, make plans with someone, anything to avoid sitting with ourselves. But here's what the ancient wisdom traditions understood, and what we've forgotten in our modern rush. The answers you're looking for aren't out there. They're in here. The peace you're chasing isn't in the next achievement, the next relationship, the next experience. It's in the quiet space within you that you've been too busy to access. When you create boundaries around your availability, you create space for this inner world to emerge. You give yourself time to think, to feel, to process, to dream. You reconnect with the part of you that knows what you really want, what really matters, what's actually worth your time and energy. This isn't selfish, it's essential. Because how can you give to others from a full cup if you never take time to refill it? How can you help others find their way if you're completely lost yourself? How can you support others in becoming who they're meant to be if you have no idea who you are? The most generous thing you can do is to become whole yourself, to know yourself deep, to build a rich inner life that sustains you. Because then, when you do show up for others, you're not doing it from a place of depletion, neediness, or people-pleasing. You're doing it from a place of genuine abundance and choice. This inner work is where you discover what you actually value, not what you've been told to value. It's where you figure out what kind of life you want to build, not what kind of life others expect you to live. It's where you develop the clarity, the conviction, the courage to live authentically, and authenticity is magnetic. When you know who you are and you live from that place, you naturally attract people and opportunities that align with your true self. You stop forcing things, you stop pretending, you stop exhausting yourself, trying to be everything to everyone. Instead, you become something much more powerful. You become yourself, fully, unapologetically, completely yourself. And that version of you is far more valuable than the overextended, people-pleasing version could ever be. This is the real gift of stepping back. Not just the external changes in how people treat you, though those are significant, but the internal transformation that happens when you finally have space to breathe, to think, to feel, to be. The art of strategic absence. There's a skill here that most people never develop. It's the ability to be strategically absent, to know when to engage and when to withdraw, to understand that your presence is a gift, not a given. This doesn't mean being flaky or unreliable. It doesn't mean ghosting people or playing mind games. It means being intentional about where you invest your time, energy, and attention. It means recognizing that not every invitation deserves a yes. Not every message requires an immediate response. Not every request is your responsibility. Think about nature. The sun doesn't shine 24 hours a day. The tide doesn't stay high constantly. Flowers don't bloom year-round. There's a rhythm to everything, a natural pulse of presence and absence, action and rest, giving and receiving. But we've forgotten this rhythm. We think we need to be on all the time, available all the time, productive all the time, and it's killing us, burning us out, making us shadows of who we could be. Strategic absence is about reclaiming that rhythm. It's about understanding that your impact is often greater when you're not always there, that your words carry more weight when you don't always speak, that your presence means more when it's not a constant. This applies to every area of life. In relationships, giving space allows attraction to build and appreciation to grow. In work, setting boundaries around your availability makes people respect your time more. In social situations, knowing when to leave makes people remember you fondly rather than wish you'd left earlier. There's an old saying that goes something like this: leave them wanting more. It applies to performances, to meals, to visits, to everything. When you overstay, when you overgive, when you're excessive in your availability, you dilute your impact. But when you pull back the right moment, you leave a lasting impression. This isn't manipulation, it's wisdom. It's understanding the natural laws of human psychology and working with them rather than against them. It's recognizing that less is often more, that quality beats quantity, that presence is more powerful than constant availability. The art is in the balance. You don't want to be so absent that people forget about you or think you don't care, but you also don't want to be so present that you become background noise taken for granted, or worse, avoided because you're always there. Finding this balance requires self-awareness. It requires you to pay attention to your own energy levels, to notice when you're giving from depletion rather than abundance, to recognize when you're saying yes out of guilt or fear rather than genuine desire. It also requires you to pay attention to others, to notice when your presence is truly valued versus when you're just filling space, to recognize the difference between people who appreciate you and people who exploit your availability. When you master this art, life becomes different. You stop feeling drained all the time. You stop feeling resentful. You stop feeling like you're constantly running on empty. Instead, you feel energized by your interactions because you're choosing them consciously. You feel valued because you're no longer available to people who don't value you. You feel alive because you're finally living according to your own rhythm rather than everyone else's demands. The transformation that follows. So what actually happens when you implement this? When you stop being so available, when you start setting boundaries and honoring them, when you prioritize your own time and energy. First, there's discomfort. People who are used to your constant availability will push back. They'll test your boundaries. They'll try to make you feel guilty. They'll tell you you've changed, and they won't mean it as a compliment. This is normal. This is expected. This is part of the process. You might feel guilty yourself. You've been conditioned to believe that saying no is selfish, that prioritizing yourself is wrong, that setting boundaries is mean. These feelings will come up. Acknowledge them, but don't let them control you. Remember, guilt is often just the feeling you get when you stop making yourself small to make others comfortable. But then, something starts to shift. The people who were only in your life because you were convenient start to fade away, and you realize you don't miss them. You realize those relationships were draining you, not filling you. You realize you were holding on out of habit or obligation, not genuine connection. Meanwhile, the people who truly value you step up. They respect your boundaries. They appreciate the time you do spend with them. Your relationships become deeper, more authentic, more fulfilling, because they're based on mutual respect and genuine desire to connect, not on one person constantly accommodating the other. You start to notice you have time for things you actually want to do, hobbies you'd abandoned, projects you'd been putting off, dreams you'd stopped believing were possible, because you're no longer giving away every spare moment to meet other people's needs. Your energy returns. That constant exhaustion you thought was just part of being an adult starts to lift. You wake up feeling more rested. You go through your days with more presence. You have capacity, joy again because you're not running on fumes constantly. Your confidence grows because every time you set a boundary and stick to it, you prove to yourself that your needs matter. Every time you say no to something that doesn't serve you, you reinforce your self-worth. Every time you choose yourself, you become more yourself. People start treating you differently, with more respect, with more consideration. They plan ahead when they want your time. They don't assume you'll drop everything. They value your input more because they know you're not just agreeing with everything to be agreeable. Opportunities start appearing that align with who you actually are, not who you were pretending to be, because you're no longer saying yes to everything. You have space for the things that really matter, and when you're not scattered across 1,000 commitments, you can actually excel at the things you choose to do. Your relationship with yourself transforms. You actually know what you think, what you feel, what you want. Because you've given yourself space to find out. You trust yourself more. Because you've proven you'll protect your own well-being. You like yourself more. Because you're not constantly betraying your own needs. This is the real transformation. It's not about becoming cold or unavailable or shutting people out. It's about becoming whole. It's about reclaiming your time, your energy, your life. It's about shifting from reactive to intentional, from depleted to abundant, from lost to found. And here's the beautiful irony. When you stop being available to everyone all the time, you actually become more able to genuinely help when you choose to. Because you're helping from overflow, not from emptiness. You're giving because you want to, not because you're afraid of what will happen if you don't. You're showing up as your full self, not as an exhausted shell of who you could be. Look, this isn't easy. Changing patterns you've had your whole life never is. Setting boundaries with people who've never experienced them from you will be uncomfortable. Dealing with the guilt, the pushback, the fear of missing out, all of it is challenging. But the alternative is continuing to live a life that's not really yours. Continuing to give yourself away, piece by piece, until there's nothing left. Continuing to be everything to everyone, except the one person who really needs you, which is yourself. The truth is simple but profound. When you stop being available to everyone, you become available to your own life. When you stop saying yes to everything, you create space to say yes to what really matters. When you stop being so accessible, you become more valuable, not less. Your time is finite, your energy is limited. Your life is happening right now, not someday in the future, when you've helped everyone else enough that you finally get to help yourself. This is it. This is your one shot, and you get to decide how you spend it. So maybe it's time to stop answering every call. Stop saying yes to every request. Stop being available to everyone, all the time, no matter what. Not because you don't care, but because you do. You care about your life, your dreams, your peace, your purpose, and those things require space, time, energy, and commitment. When you finally give them that, when you finally choose yourself, that's when everything changes. That's when you stop living everyone else's life and start living your own. That's when you transform from someone who's just getting by into someone who's truly alive. If this resonated, watch the next one.